Hi everyone, welcome to or welcome back to my channel, What Colorful World. This is episode 2 of my vlogging series. And today I want to go over Dark Fairytales by Kerby Rosanes because I'm actually a part of the Kerby Coloring Community Collab. I think that's how you say it, the challenge that is run by Karen over on My Colorful Country Life. And I've actually done this one 2 years ago when she first did it for Alien Worlds. The page that I did was this one over here, the Four-Legged Fury, and it was a fun one to do, especially because I was very excited to try, I guess, like a galaxy sky effect. And then I also wanted to color metals back then, and I wanted it to be a red metal creature. Today I'm going to be doing this page from Dark Fairytales, and it's from the Beauty and the Beast section. Dark Fairytales being a book that Kerby Rosanes has created to create the darker twist of fairy tales, either shows fairy tales in their original dark, like gruesome and nasty, twisty form, or he makes them dark and twisty himself. So, story time. An evil fairy transforms a prince into an ugly beast, and the curse can only be broken by a maiden's true love. In Kerby's artwork, however, the story takes an unsettling turn. When she finds the dying beast, she finishes the job and stabs him through the heart. Like, in some ways, like, even the original Disney one is kind of dark if you think about it. I mean, isn't there a bit of a Stockholm syndrome happening there where she's like imprisoned by him and then falls in love with him? Like, just saying. I think the original fairy tale is actually a French fairy tale. Yep, it's a French fairy tale published in 1740 in a book called La Jeune Américaine et les Contes Marins, which means the Young American and Marine Tales. So I'm just reading up on the original fairy tale. When Beauty transforms the beast back into the handsome prince, the prince's mother, the queen, comes to congratulate them and then finds out that she doesn't like that Beauty is a lowly merchant's daughter and is all classist about it, and then reveals that Beauty is actually a princess and their niece, which means that she basically just married her cousin. So there you go, that's the original story of Beauty and the Beast. I want to talk to you about how I tackle a Kerby page and what my strategies are for that here. You might notice that I am beginning by basing my page. The benefit of basing is that it kind of kills the white of the paper, and what that means is when you're coloring on top of it, the color underneath shines through, and if it's the color of the item as opposed to white, it already looks way more complete, and therefore you need fewer layers of color. But the last reason I really like basing is the idea of it blocking out the colors for you, especially when you have a page as complex as Kerby's over here, where you have so many different elements. Kind of having an idea of what color goes where, even before you go deep into the details, helps you really break down the page into manageable chunks to tackle one bit at a time. So in terms of why I like using my Ecoline brush markers to base, it's because they're very, very transparent and they have a really nice brush tip to them. And so what that does is it allows for just a gentle laydown of the color without being overwhelming. I only use the pastel series as well, not the darker ones. The more color you have with the basing, the less blending you can do on top because it just gets too dark. It's too saturated too quickly. Other people base with other things. So for instance, I know that Kira on A Pictured Purpose really likes to use watercolor pencil. I know that Shell on Shell's Coloring Journey sometimes bases with her Tombow dual brush markers, and what she does there is instead of putting the marker directly to the paper, she first puts it on like a plasticated palette. But anyway, so now that the basing is all done, we are coming in to color. So the way I kind of pick my colors is I try to have a shadow color, and that's normally where Kerby's thick lines are, is where the shadows are. Then I have my mid-tone, which is like the main color I want things to go for, and then a highlight color. So you can see here with the statue that because I've based it in gray, it's really, really easy to finish shading this very quickly. So I'm coming in mid with I'm coming in really quickly with my mid-tone gray. I'm adding in some of those details. I'm now coming in with some of my shadows, and then I'm adding in those wherever the shadows go. And then I use my lightest 10% gray, and I'm covering over everything to just smooth out my pencil work. All of this is done really fast and just pretty much in a single layer, and it really helps, like I said, make coloring go that much more quickly because I'm using that base layer of gray as part of the colors. It's the highlight color essentially of these stone statues, and so it really simplifies the process. I highly recommend basing if you are someone who has spent hours and hours and hours on a page and wants to do it faster. Basing is your way to go. So what I like to do in terms of strategy to kind of color a bit faster is what I call the McDonald's method. Yes, you heard it, as in the fast food chain. It's kind of like, there's probably like an official term for this and I'm just rambling, but when instead of making an entire burger at once, if someone's in charge of only one element of it, like the flip, then suddenly you can actually mass produce way more burgers. And they do that with car parts and things like that. Just do it one element at a time. And so over here, instead of coloring in every single rose in its completion before moving on to the next one, I only do that with the first one so I get a sense of what it is like as a completed rose. And then after that, I just pick one pencil and I do the rest of them in that one pencil, move on to the second, move on to the third, and that way just kind of divide it into just kind of like a steps. It's something, assembly line steps. There we go. It's an assembly line process. Oh, that took a while to get that word in. Okay, so I assembly lined these roses, and because these roses have so many different there's so many of them, and the line work is sometimes detailed and sometimes not detailed. I think it's okay if I'm a bit messy here. And part of that is because Kerby's trying to have things be very detailed in the foreground where it's most crisp for where you can see things, and then kind of like less detailed in the midground and just completely disappear in the background. And that gives a sense of dimension where it's, and even in your eyes, you know, you can clearly see what's in front of you, and then things get a bit blurrier the further away it gets from you. So I'm adding in these small little red dots here and there in the background to kind of signify the presence of red roses, even though there's zero details at this point, they're just red dots. I'm adding in a bit more details as I come forward to the foreground, and that's how I'm doing my roses. Because I did go through this a bit messily and a bit quickly, I did lose some definition, and that, my friend, is where markers come into place. So for this one here, I used the Posca MPC1MR. It's basically like the thinnest marker nib that you can find on the market is this tiny little Posca thing here. You can, if you want to, use jelly rolls and other kind of gel pens. These always clog up on me, and so that's why I kind of prefer acrylic paint pens to gel pens, because it is much easier to use when you're not getting angry at it clogging up on you. So at this point, the flowers are done, and when I'm thinking in terms of what to do next, I decided to jump in and try to add some dimension to all of this greenery here. And so even though the leaves are all colored in, it's white underneath the leaves, and I want it to look rich and dark as though those leaves are the top layer of a very, very dense bush. And so the best way to do that is to have the darker green be on the areas where you are not having those leaves, and then the leaves themselves be lighter, and that kind of shows some depth and transition, and it adds some texture to the page. To do this, I am using a Ohuhu water-based marker because I have them. I own them. But the nice thing about these is that they do have like a fine liner end to them. I'm not sure if I would recommend these markers completely. On one hand, they're very lovely and helpful, to have, but on another hand, they run out really quickly and the brush nib gets really messed up really quickly. But they're good for the price and they do the job, and that is always very helpful. So I'm kind of coloring in the negative space here, trying to go around the leaves and putting this dark wherever would be things that are underneath and not cover over those details. And so as I'm doing so, I'm kind of ignoring the vines because I want to eventually make the vines green too, but I'm not sure if that's too much green on green, so I'm holding off on the vines until I finish the rest of this greenery. Towards the midground, we can see that Kerby's line work is becoming more and more messy. And again, he's losing detail and definition to show that we're getting further away from the foreground as we're now entering the midground. I'm copying that with my fine liner. So I'm also making my fine liners a bit more messy and a bit more streaky, and that kind of helps still maintain that illusion, that effect that we're in the midground. And as we're pushing in towards the background, I'm having only very squiggly lines, and I'm trying to make them a bit more sporadic, and so that way it really does kind of look as though we have our definition in the front, like losing some of the detail in the middle, and just zero definition in the background, just color. And so when I'm looking at this page where I'm having such a limited color palette, the way to try to add information is through texture. One thing I noticed with Kerby's line work in this book compared to some of his other books is that the lines are way more detailed and thick. He's put like the most ink on this book than any of the other ones. I'm not sure to what extent I like that. It does make everything go that much darker because of the black line works that is present, especially when you look at portraiture in his faces. I don't really like having those many shadow lines on the faces because you can't go lighter with it. You can't kind of control your own shadows and blending with it. So on one hand, Kerby's line work is really helpful for beginners because you know exactly where the shadows go, so do the darker colors on his heaviest line work and then the lightest color whenever he leaves it like for the least amount of line work. But when it comes to having it so intense, it's a bit much. So coming into the main beastie beast over here, I decided to open my small 36 set of my polychromos pencils. I've had these for a few years and I don't use them often, in part I think because I'm not really used to how hard they are and it's really hard to blend, and I'm such a heavy-handed blender. Polys are known for fur, and so I wanted to bring these out so I can play with them a bit more and also so I can really get some of that fur definition in. Do I know how to draw fur? Nope. Do I know how to draw random, like, uneven lines? Yup. And so that's what I did on this beast to make him look furry, I guess. And so it's just like lines, just like real messy. And then even coming in with my white Posca pen to add in some like white fur lines. Maybe he's middle-aged and he's starting to develop a few grays. Who knows? And finally, the man over here, Mr. Merchant Man, adopted dad of Belle, apparently. Although, is it really an adoption as much as it is child napping? Is she like a changeling child? Was his memory wiped? Sorry. Anyway, so our lovely merchant father over here, who is trying to escape the beast, as you can see, is based in brown, and at this point I don't want him to be brown because then you have this like line, this vertical line of brown down the image of the page and middle of the page, and that doesn't really do it for me. So we're gonna have to change his color, and if it's brown as a base, that's okay. You can still cover on top of it and just the brown will seep through. So I decided to make his pants dark brown. And then for his shirt, I decided to go first with a bit of an orangey color. I didn't like that, then I went full on red, and so that way it kind of balances against the roses by having it be red. But because you have that brown underlayer, it becomes more of this earthy terracotta color when you're mixing in the red and the brown. Anyway, and I decided I wanted him to be a redhead, so I went straight orange hair, orange beard, orange eyebrows. He has a redhead. And it works. It works for me. It works for the page. Have it. This is my page, like I said, for the coloring collab run by Karen, and I know that for those of you who had wanted to be in it, she is planning on doing a couple more of these collabs with Kerby's other books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this style of video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy coloring!